Hello, everybody. Welcome back to South Beach to South Bend. So if you notice, we did not play the intro just because I think today's topic is super important and serious and it just didn't feel right. But yes, you know, this is the podcast name and we are back. It's been a while since I have sat here and done one of these, which I'm really excited that I get to do today. A lot's been happening in my life. I think October and November have been extremely busy for reporters, but I think for me, you know, my first year being a reporter, I've been just extremely busy and balancing it all in two languages. So yeah, we had elections, which we covered, and then I was also the reporter assigned to the Delphi Murder Trial. And if you don't know what Delphi is or what I'm talking about, I'm going to be actually breaking that down for you today. So there's a lot to unpack here. I have a lot of behind the scenes footage and things I want to tell you guys about just because I was in the courtroom for a lot of that trial and I was there covering it. And even when we weren't there physically, I was still keeping up with it. I was still updating the story. It was still my responsibility daily to do that on top of my other day turn. So yeah, I'm excited to bring this to you guys today now that we finally have a verdict, and I just feel better talking about it because I've done a lot of healing on my own time with the situation. So yeah, so we're going to talk about what I mean by that. I think I've never been in a courtroom for a trial, especially not a trial this big. And I saw some things that were kind of hard for me to see. And I definitely had to talk to people that I loved or that are in my circle and that were looking out for me. I'm just so thankful for all those people that did. You know who you are. If you reached out, if you checked up on me, if you spent time with me. I'm so thankful for my other reporter friends that kind of understood what I was going through, and they would make sure every weekend that I was doing okay, or, you know, they planned something fun just to get my mind off of it. I'm really thankful. So yeah, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about that, but let's go back. Let's go back to the Delphi trial, day one, and how I ended up being on the story. So this was, if I might be getting the days wrong, but I think October 17th, let me look at my calendar, matter of fact, was the day before the trial started. And let me double check that. Yep, I was correct. October 17 was the day before the trial started. And the judge, Frances Gold, she's been the one on the whole Delphi trial. She wanted to meet with the media to talk about do's, don'ts, what to expect, what the timeline was going to look like, what the expectations were going to be for the media and for the people in the courtroom. And I had never met her before, but I could just tell she was very strict and stern and to the point, and her rules needed to be followed. She made that very clear that nothing, if you weren't following the rules, that would have not been tolerated. Like, you were going to be kicked out and you were not going to be allowed back inside that courtroom. So yeah, I remember that first day, we also got the inside look of that courtroom where this whole trial was going to unfold. So they were like, you guys are going to be able to take video so people can see what this courtroom looks like, but no cameras were going to be allowed inside the trial at any point. So we couldn't have a cell phone. We couldn't have a camera. We could not have an Apple Watch. No recording or audio devices were going to be permitted in the courtroom. So she made that very clear from the beginning. No eating, no drinking allowed. Like, the rules were strict. What else? You could only have a paper and pen. So this is old school journalism, which I love. And I feel like I've just learned so much. I'm already a very I love writing on my phone, my notepads and stuff, but I love paper and pen too, because I feel like that's when I'm going to take it serious. But yeah, that's kind of how this trial worked. It was just paper and pen. And it was your responsibility to capture these notes as fast as you could. They kept talking. They weren't going to pause. They weren't going to repeat themselves. This is a trial. So I definitely picked up a lot of new skills as a reporter. And yeah, that's basically what happened on that Thursday, October 17th. She gave us the rules, the breakdown. We got to film inside that courtroom, which I'm going to show you video of now. So bear with me because I did not title these prior to the podcast. So let's see if I play the correct one. Let's see. Perfect. So let's talk about this. This is what the courtroom looked like from the inside. I've been in that room, I would say, a good 4 or 5 times. We were in there for some of the days in the trial. We were there pre-trial. And the way it worked, you're seeing those first 2 rows behind the defense team and the prosecutor's team. So we were allowed, that right there was actually where I sat most of the time. Those first 2 rows that you're looking at right there, that's where the media sat. So they had like signs on it, and the media was always behind the defense team. And it was for safety reasons. They're like, she said something about it's more unlikely that someone in the media will reach over and, you know, something would happen. So I would rather have the media there rather than, you know, family or people from the general public. So that's where we sat. And 2 rows were dedicated. 12 media passes were given out during this trial. So that was another thing. Like, getting a seat in there, one of the biggest trials that the state has seen, was a pretty big deal. We got lucky. We got, like I mentioned, a pass 4 times, 5 maybe. So yeah, 12 media passes. And the way it worked was they were randomly raffled off, and if you got lucky, you'd get one, and you didn't know what day you were going to get one or what the topic was going to be that day, what they were going to talk about. So I think that honestly, we had a pass for a lot of the very important days, like the closing arguments, the verdict. We got really lucky with that one. We got one when they played, it was the prosecutor team playing like all the crime scene photos that they had. Like, I got to see that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. But this is what the courtroom looks like. I kind of wanted to give you an inside look. This is those 12 seats on the side. I'm sorry. Is where the jury sat. And then, yeah. So let's go back to me on this camera. Okay. So I remember just the first day, that Friday, October 18, was when the trial started. I thought it was interesting that they were going to start it off on a Friday, but the way it works is the trial went on from Monday to Saturday. So they would meet those 6 days, and yeah, they would meet those 6 days. And then Sunday was a family day. So that's when they were allowed to see their families, and they were under super tight supervision the entire trial. They couldn't watch the news. They couldn't use their phones. They had like TV access, but it was like a common room, and they would always be like an officer there to monitor what they were watching and stuff. They would get to see their families on Sundays, but they couldn't talk about anything that they saw in the trial or the trial in general. The rules were very strict for this jury, and honestly, like, kudos to them. Like, they were able to do this for, I believe, a total of 29 days, if I'm not wrong. So imagine not being able to use your phone, not being able to watch what you want to watch. Like, you can't watch the news. They mostly played movies for them. You couldn't talk about what you were seeing. So all my admiration to this jury, just because, like, me personally, like, I need to be connected and know what's going on at all times. If I'm not watching TV, then I'm on my phone, and vice versa. But yeah, that's kind of the rules that they had for them. So back to what I was saying, that October 18th was a Friday. That's when the trial started. And we didn't have a pass that day when the trial kicked off for opening statements, but we were outside the courthouse, and I've never for some reason felt so nervous. Like, I just felt such a sense of like responsibility that my station, my news director, my team, and like you guys watching at home were trusting me with this story to bring you the information, to the point where like I felt nauseous, and I've never experienced that. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't get nervous on camera sometimes, but never to the point where I feel nauseous and like, yeah, TMI, but like I kind of felt like I can throw up. And I didn't like that feeling. I'm like, Erika, relax, it's okay. But it's such a big story that if you know the background of it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is not just a regular story or trial. Like, this is a big deal. So I just felt nervous, and I didn't like that feeling. But I was trying to bring the information as best as I could that day. There was so much media there for opening statements. And obviously, as the days went on, less media people started showing up, but I would always say there was a good amount there, but definitely not compared to day one and compared to the verdict day. I think verdict day was definitely the most packed I've seen it be. So I was just so nervous that day. One of my colleagues actually had a pass. Well, not my colleagues, but she's also a journalist. So I call her that. She had a pass for opening statements, and she was just in there the entire time. We were waiting for those people inside to come out and give us their notes. So that's the way it would work. If you were part of the media and you didn't have access to be in there, the people that were in there were supposed to give you their notes. And that's how we all did the reporting for this. Like, I think, let's just talk about the good sometimes, because we just talk about the bad, but it was such a beautiful way that we all came together and helped each other out. And, you know, we're at different stations, but we're all working towards informing our audiences. And I think it brought us together. Like, whether you were national or local, we were all working together. And that's one of the most beautiful things I've experienced in this industry so far. And yeah, that's just something I wanted to point out that's on the more positive side. So I remember that day, Friday, was really heavy. We had a lot of things go on, not just in the trial, but like in life in general. So I was really overwhelmed. I'm like, Erika, like, just do your best, do your job. And I was live in all shows. Like, being a reporter is really hard. Sometimes you don't have time for lunch and stuff, but I was like trying to do my best. And I had such a sense of responsibility for this story. So yeah, we went live in all shows. It was a pretty solid, good day of reporting. But I remember just getting home and feeling so overwhelmed. And I'm like, wow, this is just day one. Like, I can't imagine how long this is going to go on. Not only just go on for, but what I'm going to see and hear and how I'm going to feel throughout it. So I knew like I needed to talk to the people I loved very early on, like, you know, talk to therapists very early on. Like, I just knew I had to do those steps, which I'm glad looking back now that I did, that I looked out for myself very early on. So that happened. I went home and I come back Monday, and then my news director calls me into his office and he's like, hey, Erika, I just want to let you know that we are going to give you the entire Delphi verdict trial. And I felt so thankful for it, because I know he's trusting me with it. And I know there's other people in our newsroom that, you know, maybe have been doing this for longer, but the fact that they're trusting me, it meant a lot to me. So I was really thankful for that, because I thought I was like just doing it because one of our other like more senior, Mark Peterson is our more senior report. He's our senior reporter. I don't know what I'm saying. He's our senior reporter. So I thought, you know, he would have been the one to do it. But Mark was working on other important projects at the time. We had elections coming up, so Mark was busy with that. So the fact that they were trusting me, I was really thankful, because they could have also given it to another reporter. But yeah, I'm just thankful for that. Then what else? So yeah, he told me basically I was assigned to it. It was going to be mine from beginning to end. I was responsible for doing that story daily, plus my other day turns when we weren't there physically. And yeah, so that's the way it worked. And then the way it played out is every week we would be in that raffle to see if we would get a seat in there. So we did. I think, yeah, in October we got a seat in there. And that was the day that they played the video. So let's talk about the video. I think that's one of the most interesting things I have seen. Let me make sure I'm playing the right video for you guys. I'm skimming through this. I don't have the full video that they played in the trial, obviously, but I'm going to show you guys just what's been out there in the public for years now. Okay. So that's Richard Allen, if you guys are wondering what he looks like. I was posting about this a lot on my personal social media accounts, and a lot of my friends didn't know. So now, yeah, this is what he looks like. This is old video, though. This is not from the trial. Let's see. I'm trying to skim through this for you guys. I should have titled these, as I said. Okay, this is the one I was looking for. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but this is that bridge, and this is the bridge guy video, but this is just obviously a screenshot of the video. We saw the full thing. I don't think anyone's ever seen it. We got to see the portion where the girls are recording before they turned to him. It was a little longer than what's been out there. We got to hear the girls talk. I took notes that day, and I remember one of the girls saying, the trail ends here, we have to go down, or something like that. But then you see the man behind them coming and walking, and Libby, she was the one that was recording. So let's talk about the girls. Abby and Libby just took a walk on this bridge. Libby's sister actually dropped them off at the bridge, and they were just hanging out. It was a day off from school. They're best friends. It's a free day from school. What do? You hang out with your friends. They took this walk on this trail, and this is eventually how they came across Bridge Guy, and Bridge Guy is the person that killed them. So yeah, this is like a lot for me to talk about. Sometimes I need to like gather my thoughts because a lot went on in this trial. But basically, they took a walk and they ended up getting killed. They were killed on February 13th, 2017. Their bodies were found February 14th, 2017, the day after. Mind you, February 14th is Valentine's Day. Like, how heartbreaking is that? I just can't even imagine like what the families felt like. It doesn't matter what day it happened, but it's just the fact that it's also like Valentine's Day, a day that's supposed to be filled with love, and it's like the worst day of your life, like a day you're never gonna forget. It's a lot. But they took a walk, and one of the girls recorded a video on her phone. One of the girls that got killed, she's actually the one, if you, I don't know what way this is gonna record, but the one on your right side, if you're looking at it the same way I am, she was recording a video. She knew something was wrong, and she started recording, and that's that screenshot that you guys see. It's part of that video. And you see the girl's walking. She pans to her friend. She's in front of her friend. She turns to her friend and starts recording her as she's walking. And they're like just recording, but you see the guy getting closer to them, and then you hear her say, "Oh, the trail ends here, we have to go down." Then the guy gets closer, and you hear one of the girls say hi, like, but you hear her say hi like the same way I'm saying it, like when you're scared, when you don't really want to say hi to someone. I'm assuming what happened in that video was he was making eye contact with them or coming directly at them, so they felt like they had to interact with him. That was a very like it was a shy hi, it was a scared hi. That's how I would describe it, and that's what I believe she said. She said hi. But again, this video was just played I would say about 3 times the day. No, 1 time the day that they played it for the first time that I saw it, and then 2 other times during closing arguments. So that's what I gathered from the video, that she says hi, but she's scared. And yeah, I just hate the sound of like her voice, her being scared. Like I just feel it in my soul. And yeah, I just can't imagine what they were going through in that moment. And after that video, you hear the guy say down the bridge. So that's when the prosecutor team is saying that he basically told them to go down the bridge, and it's believed he had a gun, and that's how he forced them down the bridge, where he killed them. But they didn't die they weren't shot. That's not how they died. They died because their necks were slashed. And yeah, so. But this is how Richard Allen was even brought to attention for this murder. One of his gun shell casings, I might be wrong, I don't know gun terms, but was found near the girl's bodies, under one of the girl's bodies, and that matched his gun. The shell case, is that how you say it? I might be saying it wrong, but it was found under one of the girl's bodies, and that's how they linked him to the crime, because it matched his gun that he had at home. But that's how they believe he forced them down the bridge, by intimidating them, scaring them. And yeah, that video is longer, and I was like trying to pay attention to every detail, and you're trying to watch it so hard because they're only going to play it once. But I hated the sound of her saying hi and being scared. Like, it's one of those moments where like you just wish you could go back in time and change things for these girls. It's just absolutely like heartbreaking. That same day, they also showed the crime scene photos of the girls, that I was like not ready for. I'm sorry, I need a second, but yeah, that was a lot. They played the crime scene photos, and I didn't know what was going to be talked about every day of the trial, obviously. So when like the first one came on the screen, I was a little shocked, but it's like you're sitting in there. Once you're in there, you can't leave unless they call recess or break. And like, obviously I don't want to leave because I want to be the best reporter possible and bring you guys the most accurate information. So I was watching like all these pictures, like these crime scene photos, and one of the girls, Abby, was dressed. She had a sweatshirt on that said Delphi Swimming, and she was wearing pants. What I saw from the photos were her pants were kind of unbuttoned, like, but they like you couldn't see anything. It was like above her belly button, but it was unbuttoned from what I remember. Libby was completely naked, which is so weird to me, but I'm not part of the jury. I'm not going to tell you guys, this is what I think happened or this, like, I don't know, but that's just what I saw in the pictures. Libby was completely naked, but when they showed the pictures in front of everybody, they did a blackout, her private areas, out of obviously respect. But yeah, you can just see one of the girls was naked and one was dressed. And the way their hands were placed, sorry guys, I need a second. Abby her hands were like right here. They were like right here, it was that, I think that was weird. It's like someone placed them there after she died, because I don't think that she was like this and, you know, they did that to her and she was still like this. Does that make sense? Like you're probably gonna struggle and fight this person back. So I think they definitely placed them that way afterwards. There was also sticks on top of the girls' bodies, and they were placed like in an X. It was just a very weird crime scene. Like, I just don't know how to describe it. Obviously someone who's very, very mentally disturbed could have done something like that. And you know, this has been 7 years. People have their theories that it was more than one person, that it was one person, that he didn't do it, that he did it alone, that he couldn't have done it, that he did it. All these theories. But at the end of the day, this was in the jury's hands, not my hands, not my opinion. But I am going to give you guys a little bit of my insights and what I think happened. But yeah, so that day was tough. I saw the crime scene photos, and I just remember getting home that day and having like a complete like breakdown. So thank God, you know, like I've been mentioning throughout this whole thing, I had good people at the time that checked up on me, my mom. So yeah, I think that this trial has definitely not only made me grow as a person, well, not only as a reporter, but also as a person. I think both. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. After that, that's what happened that day. And then we were in the courtroom 2 other times where they showed like evidence, and we got a seat for closing arguments, which I was so excited for. Can we just talk about the fact that this whole trial ended way quicker than I thought? Like, I was not prepared for how quickly it was over. I thought maybe Thanksgiving, because that's what they were giving, like, as far as timeline. But this was done way before Thanksgiving. This trial wrapped up on Monday. I'll tell you guys right now. Monday, November 11th. And Thanksgiving is November 28th. And I think it shocked everybody, not just me, when the prosecutor team went first and they presented their arguments, and they were testifying for a couple days. And then the defense team took over, and they only testified, I think, I might be wrong, but like for about a week, and they were done. And everyone was shocked. Everyone's like, that's it. And they're like, yeah, we rest our case, and they are going to start deliberations and stuff. But yeah, I think it came way quicker than anybody expected. So let me show you guys just some video of like the outside of that courthouse and just what it was like being there every day. So, yep, let me play this. Yep, so this is the Carroll County Courthouse in Delphi. This was the place that I was at from sunrise to sunset for a lot of days, and the days were early. I think South Bend is 2 hours away, so I would have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to make it to the station at 5:30, make our way there, and then get our media pass. Court started every day from 9 a.m. and they would usually wrap up. It depends. It depended on the day. I think 4 or 5. They would never get, I don't think I was ever in there till 6 p.m. But it was very long days, and as you could see, there was a lot of interest in this trial. So the general public was also allowed access in there for the remaining seats, which I believe was 18 for the general public. So people were making lines the day before, and the days that they didn't get seats, they would stay for the next day. Like, it's a whole thing. It's very, very just overwhelming. So let's talk about closing arguments. I was excited to be in there that day because they're obviously coming to a conclusion. So they're going to just talk about the whole thing in general, both sides. Again, the prosecutor team presented their arguments. Again, we saw those evidence photos. We got to hear the phone calls, which I hadn't heard. Sorry, guys. I hadn't heard before throughout the trial. So that was interesting in my opinion, just because that was the first time. I'm going to start talking a little bit about my opinion. That was the first time where I got to compare Richard Allen's voice to like the other videos that they played when he was the early days of the investigation, when he was meeting with detectives and talking to them. I got to compare his voice in that bridge guy video to the phone calls, to also the first days of him being interviewed by detectives. And it was the first time where I'm like, that bridge guy voice talking to those girls sounds exactly like the bridge guy video, the guy doing the interviews with the detective. Like, it was just that phone call. It's the same voice. And it was the first time where I'm like, that's that voice. Like, that's Richard Allen's voice, you know? And I'm going to talk a little bit about my opinion. You can choose to have your own, which I respect. Throughout the whole trial, I was very 50-50. I didn't know anything about it, so I didn't come into it biased. Well, not that I didn't know anything about it. I did know, like, when I was there my first day, but I'm saying before I moved from Florida to South Bend, I didn't know anything about the case, if I'm being honest with you guys. Obviously, as we started covering it, because we did it throughout, you know, the year I was here a couple times, I started hearing about it. Lauren talked to me about it because she covered it. She talked to the family back 5 years ago when they arrested him. She was in contact with the family. So obviously I started educating myself more and I knew more about it. But I went into this trial like not having an opinion whether he was guilty or not. I was just like, I'm just going to hear everything and then I'll see how I feel. So throughout the whole thing, I was very 50-50. Even when they were showing evidence, like I was like, I don't know. Like I was so confused. And I've never felt that way. I'm very like, my intuition, I trust it. I know that I'm usually going to be right. Whatever feels right was probably going to be right. And that's always worked for me. But this was I think one of the first few times in my life where I felt like I have no idea. And I hated that because it's like, it feels like you should have one, but you don't. So I think even throughout the whole evidence being presented from both sides, I was kind of like, I don't know. Part of me felt like that first time that I felt like, oh my God, wait, that's Richard Allen's voice was when they played that phone call of him confessing to the killings and stuff. So he did confess in jail, if you guys don't know. He confessed in jail on the phone to his mom and to his wife a couple times. And every time he would do that, his wife would be like, no, stop talking about that. Obviously, because the calls are monitored and recorded. So she'd be like, don't talk about that. You're on medication right now. Like, you don't know what you're saying. So she would get mad at him and try to like change the subject, but he would be like, I did it, honey. I killed Abby and Libby. Like, he confessed. And they played those. The prosecutor played those as evidence. I think that's big evidence. You know, you're confessing to your sins. But his wife would always try to be like, no, you're on medication. They're giving you medication, because he was put on medication. And they were like, this is when he started acting out and stuff like that and saying these things, you know. And he was treated according to some of the people that were in the same facility as him, roughly in jail. He was by himself at all times. He had no human interaction besides when he would see his therapist, but that didn't start till later on. So they're like, obviously someone being alone all the time, staring at four walls all day, 7 days a week is going to drive someone insane, and they're going to start saying things that they don't mean. That's what the defense team was saying. So for me, I was very 50-50, which I hated because I always have an opinion. But I think that when I heard the phone calls and watched the bridge video again, I was like, that's Richard Allen's voice. Like, you can't tell me any different. But then there was times where I was writing scripts, and I'm going to be so honest and vulnerable with you guys, where I felt like my script made it, could have sounded as if I was like picking a side maybe, or this is what they showed, And then something in my subconscious would be like, no, Erika, rewrite that. Like, that doesn't sit right. You don't know yet. Like, so that's why I was always torn up, because my feelings, my soul, whatever you want to call it, always felt like, no, rework this. But I feel like if I was 100% positive throughout, I would have wrote it and been fine with it. But I always like second guessed it when something didn't feel right with me. But I am a believer in God, and I think I leaned on God a lot in my faith during the whole trial. And I remember for verdict day, I sat in the courtroom and I just looked up. I'm going to tell you guys what happened that day too, but I remember I just looked up and I prayed. I was like, God, like, whatever happens today, let it be what is supposed to happen, what is true, what is right, and I'm going to be okay with it. Like, I was gonna be okay with it regardless, but I don't want you guys to think like I'm picking a side, but it's more okay with the fact that like I'm I'm trying to find the correct word. I care a lot about situations even when they're not my own. So I was like, I would hate for us to send someone to jail for the rest of their lives if they're not guilty. So God, whatever, and if he is guilty, let us find him guilty. Let us not let him off so easily. And I'm not gonna lie, the defense team was so good. So there was points where I'm like, even if he's guilty, I felt like the defense team was on another level. So I was like, ugh. So I prayed to God that day. I'm like, God, like, regardless if they were good or not, just let it be the truth. Whatever happens here, like, I'm going to accept it. I just want it to be the right thing, God. Like, let it be whatever you want. Like, I was so overwhelmed on verdict day. Like, I can't even describe it. So when the verdict came out to guilty, that's what it should have been. And I'm okay with that. Like I told you guys, I've never had an opinion where I'm like, oh my God, he's innocent, he's guilty. No, I had thoughts throughout, yes, but I'm at peace with what happened, and that's justice, and that's what God wanted, and I 100% trust that that's what that was. I don't have any second doubt. No, it's fine, because even me at some points I was like, yeah, he did it. So I made peace with it, and I'm glad that I had my faith to lean on during those times. And I'm going to take you guys back now to, let's see, I'm going to try to show you guys some video to verdict day. But I made peace with it, as I mentioned. Verdict day, I was there on Friday when they started Thursday afternoon to do deliberations, and then they were there again Friday. I knew we weren't going to get a verdict so soon on Friday, but we were there just in case. And what else happened? I have a video of, the family coming in and out of the courthouse, which I'm trying to find for you guys. But let's see. Verdict day, Friday, nothing happened. And then my job wanted me to come in. This is Richard Allen's wife. I sat in front of her for a lot of the days I was in the courtroom, because I told you guys the way it works was media first 2 rows, but in that second row the media Richard Allen's family had like 4 seats, so she sat behind me a lot of the times. And I also want to talk about the fact that like Richard Allen would look over my way a lot, and I remember I didn't know what his wife looked like the first few days, so I was always like kind of on edge. I'm like, okay, I'm so confused. Why am I making eye contact with this person multiple times? But then as obviously the trial went on, I realized that was his wife, and she was sitting behind me, and he was like looking at her. But obviously when you're looking back, you're looking at that person, but you're also seeing who's like near the area or surrounding that person. So for me, I remember the first day I was in that courtroom and he looked back, like I literally like got a chill down my spine. It was the weirdest thing I was not a fan of. But yeah, as time went on, he would look back pretty often. So this is what the defense, this is the defense team. They would bring in like piles of evidence daily. This is one of the lawyers that was representing Richard Allen. And let me show you guys the family. Yep, that is Becky Patty, and then Libby's sister. We also have Abby's mom, and these are all like family members. So they were there every day, obviously. So back to what I was saying on verdict day. Okay, so Saturday they wanted me to go back to Delphi, but I'm usually just Monday through Friday. And again, guys, I'm a very like with my intuition person. Like I just trust my intuition, and I was like, I don't think that they're gonna reach a verdict Saturday. So I was like, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, like I need a mental break. Like I'm not going to go tomorrow just because of the fact that mentally, like, I just need to rest. I've been on this trial Monday through Friday, like, and I don't think they're going to reach it tomorrow. And I was right. They didn't reach it, but I was still keeping updated. I was still very aware of what was going on. I was posting updates on Facebook, and something that I've done throughout the whole trial. I've been posting in real time updates. So then we know that they rest on Sundays. The jury, they see their family members. So obviously we weren't going to get a verdict then. Monday came back around, and I had a gut feeling. I told everybody that weekend, I was like, Delphi will reach a verdict on Monday. I was like 80-20. I'm 80-20 about it. Like they will. So Monday comes, another early day. We get to Delphi. Things were kind of slow in the morning. So I started to doubt myself. I'm like, could we potentially not reach a verdict today? But that was quickly over, because I would say around lunchtime, we made a group chat all the reporters that were covering, we made a group chat, and everyone was like, I remember how I felt. I was in the car. I was writing a script because I had just gone live at noon. I was writing a script, and I get a text message that says a verdict was reached. And my heart just like starts beating so fast. I walked out of the car, and obviously when that first text goes out, then everybody just started hearing, everyone that was surrounding it. Everybody comes to the front of the courthouse, and people are just gathered there. Let me show you guys. I think I have a picture on my phone. I'm trying to get all this video into the system, so bear with me, but let me show you guys. What that picture looked like. I hope you guys can see it. Oh, the ring light, so it might be hard to see, but that's what I posted on my Facebook. Everyone gathered at the front. It was absolutely like insane. I've never seen that many people there, not even on opening statements, but the amount of people that were there for the verdict, oof, it was really like, that's what I expected. Like the first day that I went for opening statements, it was still really big turnout, don't get me wrong, but nothing compares to verdict day. So I remember just being out there, and I knew we had a media pass on Monday. We were so lucky the way it all played out. We had a media pass Monday, so we were going to be one of 12 other media outlets let inside the room for verdict, probably for the most important trial that the state will see for a while. So I was like, wow, like just the way it all played out. So we're gathered at the front. No one's saying anything, but I can see police officers standing on every corner, and they started flying the drone. So usually they would fly a drone every morning when the jury was going inside, because they didn't want the media to record the jury, obviously for privacy reasons. So we weren't able to photograph them, talk to them. Like we were not able to interact with the jury at all. So they would fly a drone to make sure no one was taking video, no one was doing a live shot when the jury was walking in and out of the courthouse. Let's see, I showed you guys this one. This is Richard Allen's wife, side note, but back to what I was saying. And then when the judge was going inside, they would also fly the drone. So when they started flying the drone, and I saw police officers, and I saw the cop cars, and like I was like, yeah, we definitely did get a verdict. So I went live on Facebook for WNDU, and I was just letting everybody know that we literally were going to be inside the room in a couple minutes to hear if Richard Allen, after 7 years, was guilty or not. Like this has been a case for 7 years, and the day had finally arrived when the girls were going to get justice. Like, can you guys imagine? Like, I can't even imagine how the family felt. Like, to hear that, like, they have a verdict. You're gonna know in the next hour or so. Like, I can't even imagine how they felt. I know how I felt, so I can't imagine how they felt. So then, sorry guys, my voice breaks when I think about it, because it's like so overwhelming when I think about it all together. So then we got told by a sheriff. He was like, okay, 12 media passes, line up, you guys will be going in there. So it felt like, have you guys ever seen the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when the kids walk inside the factory? That's kind of how it felt like everyone had their cameras pointed to the people that were walking in there, and it was just a select few. So we're making the line, we go inside. Security was tight throughout the whole trial. You had to take off your sweater, you had to, obviously you couldn't have a phone, you couldn't have AirPods, you couldn't have an Apple Watch. But that day was even more strict. Like they were scanning you, they were checking your purse. Like they were doing that if it banged before, but this time, even if it didn't, like they would still do that. So yeah, things were very, very tense in there. So I remember walking into that courtroom, which I've shown you guys already, and I felt super, I'm sorry guys, I'm trying to play this video for you. So I remember walking and knowing that I was going to get a verdict. Like we're in there, we're for sure getting a verdict at this point. Everybody in that room was so tense. You could hear a pin drop, like from the officers that were in the room at the time, to the reporters, to the victims' families. Abby and Libby's families were in there before we were in there. It was so tense. And after we were there for a while, I think we waited longer than what the verdict actually took to be read, which I thought was interesting. After us walked in the judge, and then walked in the jury. The judge said, regardless, this is a quote I'm never going to forget. She's like, regardless of what the verdict is, people will be unhappy. She said, "Take your unhappiness outside." Those are exact words that came out of the judge's mouth that day, Frances Gohl. So she was basically trying to tell everybody who was in that room, like, if you act out in any way, shape, or form once this verdict is read, you will be kicked out, and take your unhappiness outside. That's basically what she was trying to say. So then after that, the jury walked in. Then Richard Allen's family was actually the last to walk in. He was already in there before they walked in. Let's talk about Richard Allen, like what I felt coming from him that day. I could tell he was nervous. And funny, because I remember the day on closing arguments, he was like in a good mood. He was like drinking coffee. I don't know what he was drinking, but he was drinking something out of a cup. He was like laughing with his lawyers at some points during closing arguments, like during the breaks and stuff. But I remember on verdict today, it was a completely, like, I could just tell he was nervous. He didn't cry or show emotion, but I could just read people's body language and stuff. There was a point where I saw him grab a tissue and like dab his eyes. I didn't see a single tear fall or anything, but I'm just saying, like, that's kind of like the emotion I felt. I'm like, yeah, I feel like he was nervous, obviously. His family walked in. The verdict was read super quick, guys. I don't know if I was so nervous, but it felt like it was read in 2 minutes and it was over, and everybody was out of the jury was out of the room. The judge was out of the room. That's how I felt to me. Guilty, as we know, on all 4 counts, 2 for murder, 2 for felony murder. So let's talk a little bit about that felony murder charge, because a lot of people have questions about that. So that is murder with attempt to kidnap. So basically he killed them in the act of trying to kidnap. He killed them in the act of trying to kidnap them. So that's what the felony murder charge is. So guilty on all 4. And I remember when the first guilty came out, someone from the victim's families yelled yes, and like you could just hear sighs. Like when that first guilty was read, it's like so much weight got lifted off a lot of people's shoulders that were in that room. And I heard some people cry out loud, like when you know, cry out loud, sighs. Like it's just a feeling that I'll never forget. The emotions in that room were so intense from the beginning to the end, and I feel like I could feel and live like every single one of them. And just thinking about it, it's like I feel like I'm still there today. Like I'm sitting there, like I'm never gonna forget how I felt sitting in that room. So they kept reading them. It was guilty, guilty, guilty across the board. The jury was out of there. The judge thanked them for what they had done, like for the time they had invested in this. She thanked the prosecutors and the defense team for the way they had presented their closing arguments and had handled the whole trial. And then I remember Richard Allen's wife, as I mentioned, was sitting behind us, and his mom was actually in the same row as us. So I looked at his mom. She didn't cry. I didn't see her cry. She just looked absolutely shocked, like a deer caught in headlights. Like her eyes were so wide. She was just sitting there, absolutely shocked. Like she just looked around like, what is going on? Like, this is not real life. Like, that's how I felt that her eyes spoke. As for his wife behind me, she started bawling. She did not stop crying from the moment the first guilty was read to the moment she walked out of that room. She was crying. And I remember Richard Allen turned around, looked at her, and he said, "Are you okay?" I didn't look back at her at that moment because I was so focused on what he was saying, but he mouthed to her, he's like, "Are you okay?" And she was just crying. I could just hear her crying the entire time. And the victims' families, they were holding hands the whole time that the verdict was read, from the moment they walked in to the moment they walked out. There were some people that I saw them with their heads leaned forward, so I would assume that they were praying. But yeah, it was such an intense moment. And yeah, and I'm trying to remember what else. Oh, when it all wrapped up and the judge was out of there and the jury was out of there, the victims' family members walked up to the prosecutor team and they hugged them and they thanked them for the job they had done. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Then the media got up and we left the room. And I remember so every day one reporter was in charge of sending the notes to everybody else. So the reporter that was in charge that day, she basically wrote on a paper the counts and if he was guilty or not. And she was the one that walked outside of the courthouse with it like this for the rest of the world to see. And when she walked out, I was still inside. She was the first one to walk out. you could just hear people cheering and clapping and saying guilty. I'm going to show you guys that moment. I actually have it pulled up here. Let me see. You can just, I was inside during this, but my photographer was outside, so he was able to capture that moment. You can just hear the cheering of people when that guilty verdict came out. Let me see if I... Richard Allen has been found guilty of the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German nearly 8 years after they were killed. Guilty on all 4 counts, 2 for murder and 2 for the felony murder of Abby Williams and Libby German. Inside the courtroom, emotions were high. WNDU was one of 12 media outlets present for the verdict. Libby and Abby's families were first inside the room, followed by the media, Judge Francis Gohl, and last inside the room was Richard Allen's family. Before the verdict was read, Judge Gohl, who we've known has had some strict rules throughout the trial, said, quote, "Regardless of what the verdict is, people will be unhappy. Take your unhappiness outside." Shortly after that, the jury entered. The verdict was read quick and to the point. Richard Allen was found guilty by 7 women and 5 men. He sat there as the verdict was read. No emotion on his face, but his family cried as the verdict was read. As for the most important people in all of this, the victims' families, they have been waiting 7 years for this moment. When the first guilty count was read, sighs of relief and crying could be heard throughout the room. Richard Allen looked back once at his crying wife. He raised his eyebrows and mouthed to her, "Are you okay?" She cried the entire time. As for Abby and Libby's families, they were hugging each other and even walked up to the prosecutors after it was over to thank them. Outside the courtroom, emotions were mixed. What does it mean to be here 7 years later to finally have a verdict?
Release. I feel like that inside my chest, like finally, the case is closed already now. So finally, they found the murder. They found those little girls.
Did you always think he was guilty, or did you ever have doubt?
Yes, always, because there were so many things that point to him.
I hate to say it, but I was not surprised. I am used to Indiana doubling down on their terrible decisions. And I don't know. I had a lot more faith in the jury, and I will just say I'm disappointed in the jury.
I believe that he is remorseful, but we don't want the remorse. We want justice, and today was the day, and we thank the Lord for everything and all of our officers and their hard duties and work.
As why you didn't hear from the family or the jury is because a gag order is still in place. Last time we heard from them was 2 years ago, the day Richard Allen's arrest was announced. Sentencing is scheduled for December 20th. For now, reporting in Delphi, Erika Jimenez, 16 News Now. So yeah, that was the package I did for the verdict. So yeah, it was a very emotional day. Like, I'm literally shaking. I don't know if you guys could see, but like, I'm shaking talking about it because I don't want to say the wrong thing. And like I told you guys, I am a very like, a faith-based person. So like, I know what happened was what was supposed to happen. But I just, yeah, obviously I don't want to say the wrong thing or offend anybody. I did my job as unbiased as I could while carrying my own emotions into all of this. It's something I'll never forget, and I'm just thankful for the trust that was put into me to bring that back to our viewers here in Michiana. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. I wanted to do this for you guys, but it's been a busy few days, so I couldn't do it the day after. I had to wait a few days. So yeah, if you guys have any questions about this, you can always message me on social media. I'm always posting real-time updates on my Facebook page, and you can find that at Erika Jimenez. Wait, I think I have a little cool graphic for that, actually. I feel like I'm a DJ every time I'm here because it's like I have to balance all of this. Let's see if it works, but I do have one. Let's see. There you go. Look. So that is my Facebook page, and that's okay, I'm like trying to figure it out. So that's my Facebook page, and that's where you guys can send me questions and see all the updates on the stories I cover daily in real time. But yes, guys, this is it for me today. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is something I'll never forget. So I hope to do another one of these podcasts soon. Maybe have Lauren, because Lauren talked to the family. She was there for the early days of this when Richard Allen was arrested. She talked to the family, so maybe have her come on and talk to you guys more about the details of the case itself, which I know she's very well aware of. But yeah, thank you guys, and I will see you soon.